Before this video, it's best to watch the video on the brainstorming of the concept of text, so you can get an understanding of what we mean by text. After the brainstorm video, we ended up with a pretty comprehensive overview that text has to do with words and messages and ideas in communication. So here I'm going to now write a definition of text to summarize the brainstorm in the other video. Text is very generic. It is some information arranged in some format used for the purpose of communication. Now, that means a text can be anything that's used to communicate that actually has information in it. So it doesn't restrict us to just written texts. It can be written, it can be spoken. Many will even argue that art, dance, music, and many other things are text. Again, as long as it has some information put together in some way, and the purpose is for humans to understand ideas and messages between one another. Alright, so no matter what kind of text you look at, whether it's a written piece, so let's say an article, whether it's spoken, so let's say someone's speech, or even a painting, you will find that every text has 3 dimensions. Because I'm talking about 3, I like the triangle. The triangle gives me some visual tool to organize the 3 points that I'm talking about. So, in order to have a text, we have to have some information. We've got to have some stuff. I ask you, what would be the stuff of a written text? Words. Written words, right? A spoken text. Spoken words. Now, the word stuff isn't that fancy. For college, we typically need fancier words. So I'm going to use the word content to mean stuff. You gotta have some words, whether they're written or spoken. Even in art, you'll have to have some lines, some color, some shapes. So, to have a text, you have to have some content. As readers, how do we figure out the content of a text? We ask one simple question. We ask what? What is the stuff? What are the contents? What is the text about? We typically won't stop there. We will often continue to ask that what question. We'll ask what is the text about and what about that? We can continue to ask that question till we drill down all the way to the details of a text. We'll come back to talk about the what question and how to drill it down after we go around the 3 dimensions. What is another dimension of text? Well, you may have heard your mother say it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Every text has some way that it is structured. It's a format. It has some organization. So that stuff has to be put together in some format, or else it simply won't make sense. If you don't believe me, listen to this. Has be to way stuff put. Alright, stuff has to be put some way. I scrambled my words, it made no sense. The second time I said it, I put them in order, and it made more sense. So hopefully that small sentence scramble demonstrates how important structure is. You're probably guessing by now what the 3rd dimension is. Writers don't just put some stuff down in some way for randomness. There's usually a reason why writers write. And I'm talking about writers primarily because this is a reading class, but of course remember this can apply to why speakers speak, why drawers colors, draw, and so on and so forth. Every text has some stuff put together in some way for some reason. As a reader, these are the three most important questions you'll need to ask about text. But it's not enough just to ask them in general. We need to sometimes ask them more specifically. So I'm going to go back through each of the questions. Now I'm going to add the reading skills that we'll be doing in this class to kind of give you a map of the entire semester. We start out the semester with doing main idea. Main idea falls under the content area because the main idea answers that question, what is the passage about? It answers that question in a very general way, giving us the overall point of the entire passage. We don't stop there, though. We look more specifically at the contents and determine what the details are as well. So we get specific. So that way, when we read, we get both the big picture and the small picture. Now in this class, we will also take it one step further, and we will look at individual words that we may not be familiar with as we read, and we'll learn how to use the other words to figure out individual words we don't know. I like to call this micro. We will zoom in all the way to the individual words to figure out unfamiliar ones, inside details, so we don't miss a beat. We get a comprehensive understanding of all the information and can end up summarizing it in one sentence of main idea. So there are the three first skills that we do in class, and all three of them are fundamentally dealing with what the text is about, giving us a handle on the content. For skill number 4, we move over here to author's purpose. Author's purpose is basically answering why did the author write the text, and we answer it in terms of what the overall reason is. So it's a general skill that we will use to get a handle on the entire passage's purpose. After author's purpose, we'll complete the triangle and move over to look at structure and do skills number 5, 6, and 7, all of which go together in what I call the technical structure. By technical structure, I mean the literal building blocks of how passages are put together, how words are put into sentences, and how sentences are put into paragraphs, and how paragraphs are put into complete passages. We will, of course, take a general look at the entire passage and how it's organized, and we call that the organizational pattern. But as in some of the other areas, we will begin to zoom in, and we'll start looking at 2 or 3 sentences in any area of the passage and try to say what is the relationship between those 2 to 3 sentences. So you see, we will get more specific, and we will zoom all the way in to one sentence and look within it and try to figure out what is the relationship inside that one sentence. So we'll go from general all the way to the most specific focus that we can have inside a paragraph, which would be the sentence level, insofar as how are the ideas put together. After structure, after spending some time on how a passage is put together, we will actually focus more in on a type of detail. We'll go back to what the information is, we'll focus on some details, and we'll do skill number 8, which is fact or opinion. This will actually literally be looking at one sentence and making a decision, is that one sentence a fact or is that one sentence an opinion? So we can figure out what kind of content is in the details, and this will actually set us up then for the last 4 skills. The last four skills really relate to fact and opinion. After fact and opinion, we'll come back over and dig deeper into the author's purpose. We'll take a look at not just overall, why did the author write the passage, but we'll look at different points in the passage and try to see, is that author biased for something or against something, positive or negative, or is that author neutral? In other words, they don't have any bias. Typically, if there's opinion, and there's lots of details that show that the author has an opinion, there's going to be some kind of bias. Typically, if there's fact, there's going to not be very much bias at all. After author's bias, we'll move over to structure again, but in a slightly different way. Rather than looking at the technical structure, which we will have already done, I like to call this the emotional structure. Going back to that question I said your mom may have often asked you, or statement that she may have often made, is it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And she's probably referring a little bit more to tone than she is to relationships within and between, though those certainly are part of structure. So author's tone, we're going to work with overall of the passage. What's the attitude? What's the emotion? What's the feeling? What's the mood? This will relate very closely to bias, very closely to purpose, and of course, again, fact and opinion will help us with tone, because if there's fact, there won't be very much tone. If there's opinion, we'll have to figure out what kind of tone there is based on the bias as well. 2 more skills to go. Skill number 11 brings us back over to the question, why is a text written? Inferences and conclusions, those are the things that we figure out when we read between the lines. When we dig beneath the surface of the details. So we will get more specific here and zoom in to certain areas of a passage and say, well, if the author gives us this fact or this opinion or whatever detail we get, what does he mean by it? What is he suggesting? What are we supposed to get from it? And finally, we will end the semester with author's argument. Author's argument is when we have persuasion. So when we have an author's purpose of persuasion and a main idea that is an opinion, we need to take a look at that entire passage and try to figure out, how did the author support that argument? How did the author try to persuade you? What kinds of details were used to back up that main idea that is an opinion? Well, if most of the ideas backing up the opinion are more opinion, it won't be a very strong argument. Whereas if most of the details backing up that opinion are facts, it will be a strong argument. So we will be looking at what argument structure is there, is it weak, or is it strong? And that's the end of the semester. The next video shows you, based on these skills, when we have tests.